Zurich's story begins over 2,000 years ago during the time of ancient Romans. Founded by the Romans in the 1st century BCE, Zurich, known as Turicum at the time, served as a customs station and strategic military outpost along the banks of the Limmat River. The origin of the name Turicum is uncertain, but it is believed to have Celtic roots, possibly meaning settlement by the water. During the Middle Ages, Zurich emerged as a prominent trading center within the Holy Roman Empire. Its location at the crossroads of major trade routes made it a hub for merchants, craftsmen, and scholars from across Europe. The city's prosperity was further bolstered by its affiliation with the Swiss Confederation, a loose alliance of semi-autonomous cantons that formed in the 14th century to resist external threats and assert their independence. The Reformation of the 16th century brought about significant changes to Zurich's religious and political landscape. Led by reformer Huldrych Zwingli, Zurich became a center of Protestantism, embracing principles of religious freedom and individual conscience. The city's commitment to intellectual inquiry and innovation during this period laid the groundwork for its future as a center of education, culture, and commerce. The 19th century saw Zurich undergo rapid industrialization and urbanization as advances in technology and transportation transformed the city into a modern metropolis. The construction of railways, bridges, and factories fueled economic growth and attracted migrants from rural areas and abroad, contributing to Zurich's diverse and cosmopolitan character. In the 20th century, Zurich emerged as a global financial center, thanks in part to its stable political environment, strong banking sector, and favorable business climate. The city's reputation for innovation and efficiency attracted multinational corporations, financial institutions, and tech startups, cementing its status as a leading hub for finance, technology, and entrepreneurship in Europe. Today, Zurich stands as a vibrant and dynamic city known for its picturesque old town, thriving cultural scene, and a high quality of life. From the shores of Lake Zurich to the bustling streets of Bahnhofstrasse, the city's diverse neighborhoods and landmarks reflect its rich history and cosmopolitan spirit. Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the Travel Like Locals podcast. I am your host, Alex Tappery. After graduating from Texas A&M in May of 2019, I decided to spend my last few months traveling before I was set to start my first full-time job as an engineer in early June. As part of this trip, my friend Matt and I spent 2 days in Switzerland in the city of Zurich. Our first day, we had planned to go paragliding. We met our guide and began the exhausting hike up Oedelberg Mountain, taking turns carrying the very heavy equipment. Unfortunately, when we got to the top, we were informed that the winds weren't strong enough and we wouldn't be able to jump, and with plans the next day, it wasn't going to be possible to reschedule. The following day, we took a guided tour of the city where we took a bus through the streets, followed by a cruise down Lake Zurich to the town of Rapperswil. Here we explored the castle and the town and grabbed some lunch. Switzerland is obviously famous for its awe-inspiring natural landscapes, but of course you can't forget the food. For Zurich, I've made Zurich Schnatzlitz, which is sliced pork in a mushroom cream sauce, often served with Rösti, the traditional Swiss shredded potato cake. You can find this recipe on my Instagram or TikTok at @TLL_pod. In this episode, I've interviewed Lino, a tour guide and photographer in this great city. For all of his recommendations and more, be sure to check out my website, www.tllpod.com. But for now, on to the interview. All right, I'd like to welcome our next guest on the podcast, a tour guide from Zurich, Switzerland, Lino. Lino, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Alex. Pleasure to meet you.
You as well. So could you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into being a tour guide?
Sure, it's actually quite a funny story. I used to be a real estate agent, and then I quit my job about 2 years ago. I traveled to Southeast Asia, and when I come back, I didn't really have an idea what to do. But I remembered I was a guest on other tours, so I thought it would be fun to switch the tables and become a guide. It was more a side gig first. So actually, when I was in Southeast Asia, I was surprised that a lot of the Airbnb experience or Viator, like a lot of tours, they aren't like, well, it's like kind of professional, but not like to that level that I expected with the whole company and everything. It's mostly like casual people, which I loved. So I thought, actually, I could try it for myself. It's more like as a side gig or as a fun project. And then after first few days, I got a booking. Was really surprised, and it went great. And yeah, so kind of things started.
Awesome. So, what kind of tours do you specialize in?
Especially with photography. That's
Mm.
also a thing. When I went to Southeast Asia, I brought my camera because I'm big into photography. So up until I traveled, mostly like bird photography or animals, wildlife. And when I traveled, it was kind of a cool excuse to meet people. Like, hey, let's take some pictures together.
Hmm.
There was also an idea for my own tours to kind of mix it with tour guiding and taking pictures. Because that's the thing when you travel, right? You want to make some memories and capture some pictures.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So, I just wanted to start the podcast by going through some probably common myths about Zurich and for you to tell us if they're true or not, basically. So, myth number one is Switzerland uses the euro.
That's wrong. We are not part of the European Union, even though we are like in the heart of Europe. We have our own currency. It's called the Swiss franc.
There we go. Next, Zurich is the capital of Switzerland.
It's like New York. It's the economical capital, but the political capital is called Bern, so it's not.
All right. Next, every Swiss person speaks multiple languages.
Sort of. I would say everyone speaks at least fluent English. I would also say that my English is not perfect, but more or less like my level. And we have 4 official languages in Switzerland. About 60 to 70% speak German or Swiss German. It's kind of strong accent. So German people, they claim they don't understand us at all. I'm sure they do, but it's maybe like East Coast, West Coast, or maybe some regions could be like Irish. So pretty
Mhm.
strong, like English, Irish, like some pretty strong accents. That's about 60 to 70%. Then about 20-ish% speak French. That's more in the western part of Switzerland. And then on the Italian border, it's Italian is the official language. And there's like even about 10,000 people or probably less, so just a few villages who speak their own language. It's called Retromanche. So we
Okay.
have 4 official languages, and I would say with English, yeah, we can say everyone speaks multiple languages, but maybe not all 4. I'm pretty sure with the Retromanche, even though it's official language, that I don't know that many people who speak it. But I
Really
would say
cool.
so far this is a truth myth.
Okay. And then last one, Zurich is very expensive.
Yes, for sure. I think Forbes just released a report that this year Zurich is the most expensive place in the world, and yeah, I probably agree. When I travel to Bali or Thailand or more like affordable places, I think some things like coffees or meals are probably like 15 times cheaper than in Zurich.
But I think also the local uh, pay is good for the Swiss people that are living there, correct? Like it's not like it's just a very expensive city and everybody's priced out of living there. If you work there, you can probably afford to live there.
Absolutely, I think it's the highest minimum wage in the whole world. About like cleaners or waiters or like lower paying jobs have all like the minimum wage, at least in Zurich. If it's another Swiss city, it's slightly less. But Zurich is about yeah, almost $4,000 a month as a minimum wage.
Wow.
So I think even if you compare it to like New York or Los Angeles or like other high cost of living places, the minimum wage is nowhere close. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like it works out. People get paid a lot, and it's really expensive too. So high income, high expense, and it works out.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So, for anybody who's coming to Zurich, what would you say is the best time to come and visit?
I think like summertime and Christmas, kind of opposites, but those are like our peak seasons. Only
Hmm.
downside is it's quite busy because it's yeah, it's popular and everyone knows, or most people they know that's really pretty in these seasons. So personally, I also like autumn season with some leaves, and it's not that warm. Well, it's like Switzerland is generally like the Northern European countries. It's quite cold temperatures,
Hmm.
but that's also a reason. Like summertime, it's around 30 degrees or 20 to 30, and maybe you've seen like the typical Swiss landscapes with like the stunning like green grass and the
Yeah.
crystal clear waters. And I think to experience those landscapes or like those sceneries, it's usually summer is the best. On the other hand, Christmas is also really romantic with if you get some snowfall and the wooden houses. However, Zurich is a bit more on the urban side, but we also have some of the more like villages close by, or it's super close, like within 1 hour, already in a completely different place.
Wow.
So whole
S
Switzerland is probably like more like a state in the US.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of comparisons, not weather-wise specifically, but just kind of everything else-wise, that Switzerland is like the Texas of Europe. Very independent kind of place.
I have some tour guides from Texas, and I heard some of the comparisons as well.
Yeah. So you said the summer is a good time to go. Were you saying it gets up to about 30 degrees? That's kind of the peak?
Yeah, maybe like for 5 days it can be like 35, but I think historically 30 was the peak, and maybe now like 35. But generally, summertime, I would say maybe like 20, 25, and 30 is like except like the few hot weeks, I think 30 is a peak.
Okay. So for Fahrenheit listeners, that's 20 is about 70 degrees or so, which is great weather. And then, yeah, 30, 35, that's getting into the 90s. How you said it snows in Zurich. How cold would you say it gets down to? Below freezing, obviously.
Yeah, like around Christmas season, I think the coldest it gets like -5, -10. But
Hmm.
this is also just a few days. I think generally it's around like zero degrees. Um, Not sure it was in Fahrenheit.
It's about 20 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Zero is 32, but okay, cool. No, that's great to know. Are there any specific local events or festivals throughout the year that would be worth traveling for specifically?
Yeah, I think if someone is into like really cultural things, one is called Sachsilüte. That's kind of funny translation, but it means the ring after six. It's a super old, like medieval tradition where we basically burn away the winter. So there's this huge snowman standing on maybe like a 5 meter stack of wood, and we burn the wood, and then at some point it reaches the snowman.
Hmm.
There's some not firework, but there's like makes some like fireworks make some noises when it reaches it, and the head explodes. So that's kind of symbolically to burn away the winter.
Okay.
And this is around 10th, 12th April.
Okay.
Each year it's a different date, but around like 10th to 15th April.
Very
That's really
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
It's a medieval tradition, and it's quite a big event. It's like a few thousand people that are coming and visiting, and it's kind of a thing to bet how long it takes till the head explodes. And it's really funny. On some summers, it's literally just like 30 minutes. On other ones, it's like 1 hour and 30 minutes. The saying is the quicker it burns, the hotter summer will get.
So is that specific to Zurich itself, or do they have that all over Switzerland?
No, it's really a thing for Zurich. And other parts of Switzerland, we have cantons. It's basically like states.
Hmm.
And they're basically like everyone is coming to Zurich to see that.
Very cool. So in Zurich, is the primary language there the Swiss German?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any common or simple Swiss German words and phrases you could teach us that could help somebody traveling over connect better with a local?
Sure. Generally, German is maybe not the easiest language. Um, but a good example of the Swiss accent is we have some French influences. For
Mm.
example, thank you in German is danke. However, me personally, or most Swiss German people, they just say merci. It's like the
Hmm.
French merci.
Hmm.
So that might be a cool thing, and it's also not too hard to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Once, well, there's like a super hard one that's
Okay.
all to make fun of Swiss German. It's basic. It's called Chuchichastli.
Okay.
It's a lot of ch, because it's like comparison to Swiss German and German, we have like a lot of ch, and we make things little and small. So Chuchichastli, it basically means for the like probably the closest like kitchen, like little cute kitchen cabinet.
Okay.
Cabinet. That's sort of what it means. And it's
Yeah, I think
always the thing, like if a German speaking person comes and they try to say but they can't.
yeah, I feel like German a lot of the words are very very specific. You take a lot of smaller words, put them together to one big word that means something extremely specific, and I mean it's very it makes a lot of sense in a language, I guess, but it also is so different, it seems like, than many other languages.
Absolutely, I think it's a nightmare to learn, especially compared with like French, Spanish, Italian, who all have like sort of Latin base or kind of similar, and then German is completely different. And Swiss German
Yeah.
is like the Irish accent of it.
That's cool. So, for anybody traveling over, is there any specific area that you would recommend them to stay in or to avoid completely?
I think there's nothing to avoid. Generally, Zurich is not that touristy. Like most people, they come here for work. Or yeah, we have the airport, but how it usually goes, like people they arrive here and then they directly move to either to Lucerne or Interlaken, the touristy places. So I think Zurich overall shouldn't be that like they're not really tourist traps or some places to avoid. To stay, my personal favorite is just like the downtown area and close to the city center with the old town, and the river, and the lake.
Okay. Would you recommend staying in hotels, Airbnbs, or just whatever fits your price range?
Whatever fits the price range, because Zurich will demand a lot.
Yeah. Cool.
That's, there's also some good hostels, which
Mm.
probably help to save some costs.
Yeah. Perfect. What is the best way to get around the city?
Public transportation. It's a typical European country. I know in the US it's probably hard to survive without a car.
Yeah.
Here it's harder to survive with a car.
Hmm.
Our politicians, they incentivize people to use public transportation. And it's especially if you like rent a car, it's kind of difficult to get around. Because like a new
So,
place, new country, and it's really not made for cars. I think
mhm.
even if like locals, if you live somewhere like say in half an hour, um, around Zurich and you work in the center, it's way more convenient to not own a car and just use a public transportation.
Okay. So is there, for tourists coming in for a few days, is there a specific like transit card they can get that's made specifically for tourists for a few days, or you just get a general card? What would you recommend people to do for
I think the most
coming
common
in?
one, and also one of the best choices, is called the Swiss Pass. It covers whole Switzerland for a few days. There's also some for just Zurich, but I think it's not that big, or it's also like a cool place to stay and then do trade trips to other areas. So I think the Swiss Pass will be one of the best choices.
All right. And do you know how much that would cost?
I'm not sure because it depends on the season and also,
Okay.
but I think generally it's I think 200-300 Swiss francs, or I mean like $350 for like 3 days, which I guess is like the minimum. Like yeah, like 2 days. Or other ways you're just gonna buy like a normal day card, which
Perfect.
also quite pricey compared to other places. But I always say in Switzerland, like we also get what you pay for, like the safety level, like the hygiene or like the cleanness. Like, we won't find any trash lying around, which is definitely the case in some of the neighboring countries.
Hmm.
So, and also the public transportation is really safe. Like most people in the rush hours, you'll see they wear suits or yeah, like just families. It's I think in the US, a lot of stories I heard, maybe except of New York, is like people that can't afford a car, or also a lot of like criminal or a lot of like shadier. Not doesn't have like the best images, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Apart from, I'd say, there's maybe a couple public transit systems in the US that are okay, but for the most part, it is, yeah, somebody who can't necessarily afford a car and it's just their only way of getting around. Or just maybe people who are homeless and that's kind of their best option for having shelter, roof over their head. So it's, yeah, not necessarily the best image for just anybody to go and use it, compared to what you would see in Europe, with kind of a much higher usage percentage. So yeah, a lot safer and more welcoming. So yeah, it's always nice to go over and take advantage of that while you're there.
Yeah, it's like exactly what I heard so far. So yeah, people don't worry about it. Feel free to take the public transportation. It's also a good example is like if you arrive from the airport to get to city center of Zurich, by train it takes about 12 minutes. And by car, if it's like zero traffic, it's also around like 12, 15. But on
Mm,
rush hour, it can be like a half an hour. So it's also saves time.
yeah, you can't beat that. Quicker, safer, easier. Perfect.
Cheaper.
And cheaper. Yeah, that's definitely true. Um, cool. So, what are some of the must try dishes or foods to have while you're in Zurich or Switzerland as a whole?
I think Switzerland as a whole, it's, you have to try the fondue.
Hmm.
Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Basically, the cheese soup or like the melted cheese, and you put in some like, little slices of bread. This is like typical one of, I think, the most iconic Swiss dish. Other one is called raclette. It's a
Hmm.
bit lesser known, and French people claim to be that they invented it, but it's actually Swiss. It's basically a potato, and you put in some cheese, and there's like a lot of different variations. So sometimes you have like some onions with it. Sometimes you have some little sausages. That's another funny Swiss German Swiss German thing. Like in Germany, you have like big sausages, and in Switzerland we also have like some little sausages specifically for the for the raclette.
Mm.
I think those two are probably for whole Switzerland the most iconic ones. And there's a specific one for Zurich. It's called Zürich Schnatzlets. It means the sliced meat of Zurich,
Okay.
and it's with a mushroom sauce and rösti. Rösti is like grilled potato. It looks like a potato cake. It's like
Okay.
the side dish, and then the meat with the mushroom sauce comes along with it.
Nice. That sounds
I
really
think
good.
those three are must tries. It's quite heavy
Hmm.
food. So, but most
Okay.
of our local Swiss people, they aren't into it that much anymore. But like my
Mm.
grandparents' generations, that's usually what they eat or what they love to eat.
Cool. Are there any specific restaurants that you would recommend people to go to try these things in
Sure.
Zurich?
One of the one of the most famous one or one of the best to try the authentic Swiss food, especially the Zürich Schnatzlets, the sliced Zurich meat. It's
Hmm.
called the Zeughauskeller. It's right at the downtown area. You also find it easily on Google Maps. I think it has almost 10,000 reviews, which is a lot
Wow.
for Zurich.
Hmm.
And maybe in winter times you need to make a reservation because it's really busy, it's really good, and also price-wise, it's decent for Zurich standards.
Hmm.
Another one is called Hiltl. I mentioned that a lot of like younger Swiss people they aren't into the super traditional Swiss food anymore because it's super heavy.
Hmm.
So Hiltl is actually the oldest vegetarian restaurant in the world. And the owners, they're Swiss, but they spend a lot of times in India and they took some like the oriental spices and flavors in it. They also still have like some Swiss kitchen, but also mixed with yeah, some oriental elements, and everything is vegetarian, which is pretty cool. especially for
Yeah.
tourists. They love to visit, to go there. And Hiltl, it has one main restaurant. It's called the House of Hiltl. And there's also a rooftop terrace. It's basically in other areas, there are other ones called Tibbits from the same branch. But if you're there, I think you have to try like one of the OG, the House of Hiltl or the rooftop terrace, especially if you're into vegetarian food.
Hmm. Really cool. What are the common meal times in Zurich?
Originally, it's quite close into the US times, so like around 8 a.m. breakfast, or it's like 6, I say like 6 to 8 a.m. breakfast,
Hmm.
12 for lunch, and 6 p.m. for dinner.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
that's the traditional one, and it's also pretty flexible.
Hmm.
So you can also have dinner at like 10 p.m. It should be no problem.
Okay, so yeah, you shouldn't really need to worry about restaurants having odd opening or closing times, or not odd necessarily, but different opening and closing times than what you're used to.
Exactly, especially like in Zurich, there's you don't have to worry about it. If you're like in a super small village, sometimes they have some breaks, but yeah, like for lunch, maybe like after 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. they close till like 6 or something like that.
Hmm.
Not like in some other European countries.
Yeah. So, are there any aspects of the culture in Zurich that you have found with different people from, say, America specifically, that are just completely foreign to them and something you really have to explain to them when they come over?
Yeah, for example, we don't tip. That's That might be fun. It's not like rude, so sometimes it's not like in Japan where you tip they get pissed off or offended,
Hmm.
but it's definitely don't have to. With our prices, I think it might also help. Don't have anything. Another one is maybe like the local people. They're pretty friendly. I think generally like North Europeans, they tend to be like more work driven or like workaholics, and they struggle maybe a bit when it comes to like social interactions. Like if you
Hmm.
ask someone for the way or something, like they're pretty friendly, but it's not like in Italy or Spain where they talk to you like for a half an hour or they might invite you home. It would never happen. So maybe sometimes it might feel a bit weird, or if you try to like chat with someone in a restaurant or a bar. Usually, if they see you're a tourist, it shouldn't be a big problem. But for example, expats, I know quite a lot, which are confused how hard it is to make friends.
Mm.
Some of them they're in touch with Swiss local, like locals from Zurich, for like 5 or 10 years, and then they ask them, "Hey, yeah, let's meet us like at my home. Can you come over?" And then the Swiss person, they're like, "Oh no, like reacted surprised, like, what do you mean, like at your home? Crazy." So maybe it's socially, yeah, we're not that talented like the South European neighbors, but we're friendly.
Okay. So I'm just curious, how would you generally make friends outside of work or just in general?
That's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Maybe with some sports activities, things like jogging or like in summertime, the stand-up paddles are quite popular. And I guess in yeah, like some leisure activities like those, the Swiss people might be a bit more like in the friendly, like in a more casual mood. I think it's more
Okay.
the stereotypical Swiss person, especially like from the German-speaking part, like Zurich, they're a bit more shy or like a bit more on the introverted side.
Hmm.
But I think there's like some meetups, which, or yeah, like sport events. Maybe there you have some better chances.
Okay. And
But
what
there's
is the stand up puddle? What was that? Sorry.
yeah, stand-up paddle in summer times really got popular over the last years. So on the few days we have like 35 degrees or 30
Hmm.
degrees, it's usually completely booked out, and we have to come quite early in the morning, and it's fun. It's like stand-up paddles. We have like one paddle, and it's like small, yeah, something between like a boat and the and the surfing, and this is really cool to get around maybe like 1 or 2 hours on the lake.
Oh. Oh, okay. Stand up paddle boarding basically, right?
Yeah. I think the
Okay.
short form is like STP. It's also some of the
Okay.
companies like STP rental and
Yeah, okay. No, you'll see that in the US too. During or on lakes or anything when the weather's great. So, okay. Yeah. No, that makes
I think
perfect
we
sense.
we stole it from you guys. There are none of those, but now it pops up like everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I've never personally done it, but no, it looks nice.
If you're ever in Zurich in the summer times, you should check it out.
There we go. Um, what would you say are some of the must-see places when you're in Zurich?
I think the lake for sure, and like in the downtown area, like in my classical tour, it's about like 2 to maximum 3 hours stroll, maybe without pictures, like 1.5 hours, and it starts at the Zurich main station, and then we walk towards the lake. It's called Bahnhofstrasse. It's basically the Fifth Avenue of Zurich.
Hmm.
So at the moment, probably the most expensive road in the world. Like a lot of fancy stores, and yeah, with the Swiss prices, it even makes things worse. And then it's also passing the financial district. It's called Paradeplatz. It's basically the Swiss Wall Street.
Hmm.
And then you can head like towards the lake. That's also the spot where the local festival where they burn the snowman
Oh, okay.
in front of the lake. And then it's like the Opera House. It's also one of the famous or one of the most famous opera house in the world. I think number one is Vienna or New York, but it's also Zurich. It's quite well known.
Hmm.
The beautiful area, they call it the Opera House area, but it's basically like you can also stroll around the lakeside. There's some cafes too, and then just the Old Town area. One is called Niederdorf. It's the original, like most local people, they make difference between the Old Town and Niederdorf, but for tourists, it's all the same. And we have like three famous churches: the Großmünster, St. Peter, and Fraumünster. It's like all basically in like the same Old Town area. And one of my personal favorites, it's called the Lindenhof. It's a viewpoint where you have a nice view on almost the whole Zurich.
Nice.
I think if you type it in Google Maps, you should find it, Lindenhof.
Okay. Yeah, I'll include links and all of your recommendations on my website so people can easily find those. So
Perfect.
perfect. How many days would you recommend somebody to spend in Zurich specifically?
What I've seen a lot of times is like people, they take Zurich as like their hub to travel whole Switzerland. In this
Hmm.
case, I think maybe about a week is fine. If it's really just to stay in Zurich, maybe 2 nights will be enough. Because everything is quite small, especially compared to US or India or some like huge countries.
Hmm.
Even like other European like population of Zurich is about 500,000. And then something like Paris is like way bigger, or Rome, or like other European cities, which I
Hmm.
think you can easily spend like a whole week just in one place. Of course, you could do it in Zurich too, but it's not that common. So I think like 2 nights will give you enough time to visit a lot of places. If it's just Zurich, and if it's whole Switzerland, and you're gonna do some day trips, then probably around a week will be enough.
Okay. And are there any specific day trips or off the beaten path locations that you would specifically recommend?
Sure. Um, just thinking that the normal beaten path first. I
Sure.
think it's not that well known is called the Abbey of Einsiedeln.
Hmm.
That's about yeah, almost an hour trip. It's this beautiful abbey, and a lake is also towards it. Um, yeah, Rhine Falls is definitely popular ones. The whole eastern Switzerland is really kind of underrated in my opinion. So it's like one little town. It's officially it's a town, but probably for most people it's like a village. It's 1,000 people live there. It's called
Hmm.
Appenzell. And there you can experience like this super traditional local Swiss vibes. There's like some cheese that are manufactured there, and they also have some events where the farmers, they walk with the cows up to the mountains, that's in spring, or they bring the cows back to the town. It's in autumn, winter. And there are like a lot of those events called Alpaufzug or Alpabzug. Basically means like, yeah, bringing cows up and down. And I think that's all Eastern Switzerland. It's also about slightly more than an hour, maybe an hour, 15 minutes. And there you can do maybe 1 or 2 day trips like to Appenzell. And there's one mountain called Sentis. And it's really, really beautiful. Like they also invested a lot in tourism. It's quite new, it's amazing, and not that busy compared to other areas.
Okay. So I think if people think of Switzerland, they think of just the beautiful nature, the mountains, and everything. And I think there's a lot of outdoor things to do while you're there. Are there any hikes or I don't know, skiing, Paris, like anything like that your favorite things to do, or just things that you've noticed that people do a ton that involve outdoor activities and just being out in the open?
Sure, I think hiking is one of the biggest like most popular things to do. Also for me personally, I wouldn't say like hiking. It's maybe something between just walk or strolling and hiking.
Hmm.
Because like most tourists, they don't want to get in like the super crazy stuff with equipment and hike
Hmm.
up some mountains. I don't mean this kind of hiking. I just
Yeah.
mean like more casual, like something in between. If it's in Zurich itself, Silwald is one of my favorites. It means like Seal is a river and Wald is forest. So
Mm.
it's like a nice forest. There's like several options, starting like from 1 hour till like almost a day, and this is really close. The other one in Zurich, it's called Uetliberg. It's the house mountain of Zurich. It's just
Hmm.
800 meters, which is really, really small for Swiss mountains, but it's super close, just about 20 minutes from the main station of Zurich. And if you're like into running, the whole lakeside, like in the Opera House area, there's amazing ways you can walk or like run you can run like a whole marathon if you want.
Mm.
There's also some events like the Ironman with like
Hmm.
cycling or swimming that takes place in this area. And other ways, maybe like a hidden gem place. There's a lake called Pfäffikersee or Lake Pfäffikon, and I think that's one of my personal favorite hikes. It takes about 2 hours, depending like how fit you are. Maybe you also able to do it in less time. And this is about 30 minutes from Zurich. You can hike like around the whole lake.
Okay. Are there any ski mountains in Zurich, or where's the closest place to ski?
Not in Zurich itself, but around like 1 hour to it.
Hmm.
There are like several options in the like southeastern area, like Flumserberg. This is quite a local thing to do, but it's also quite busy because like the closest and everyone has goes there. Um, Other ones are in the Berner Oberland. It's like the most famous area, which I don't really mention in this interview too much because it's like the typical beaten path, and it's super,
Hmm.
super touristy for good reason, though it's beautiful. And they have several skiing areas. Wengen is a famous one, um, or First, Grindelwald First, and that's about like 1.5 to 2 hours from Zurich.
Okay. And so I guess your area of specialty is photography. What are your top, we'll say, three places that you take people to get the best pictures?
That's a good one. Just Zurich.
Yeah, let's just say just Zurich.
Uh, Definitely Lindenhof, place I mentioned with the amazing view.
Hmm.
Other one at Bahnhofstrasse, specifically Paradeplatz, like the Fifth Avenue of Zurich. And other one, Augustinergasse. It's also something between Old Town and Bahnhofstrasse. It's also a good place, right? I forgot to mention previously. Augustinergasse is my personal favorite alley. It's really small, but it's beautiful. There's like a lot of red colors and like typical old town houses.
Amazing. So if somebody wanted to buy, say, a craft or souvenir while they're there, I know Zurich maybe is more so, or not necessarily a massive tourist destination, but are there any specific places you would recommend for anybody who wants to bring home a souvenir?
My go-to souvenir store, it's called Teddy Souvenir.
Hmm.
Um, People on my tour, they also get a small discount. Maybe I can ask them, and you can also put it on your website.
Sure.
Um, yeah, that is like generally Zurich is not super touristy, so we don't have like that many like in the Berner Oberland area, which I mentioned previously. We have like a lot of Chinese or Indian mass tourism, and it's crazy. Like the souvenir store is like maybe a Costco or something. It's wild. It's huge. So it's
Hmm.
not nothing to expect like this in Zurich. But Teddy's is like a cute little souvenir store, like a family business, and I always had a good experience.
Okay. And so there's obviously some famous products that come out of Switzerland that kind of, uh, yeah, you'll see all around the world. And foods, I would say specifically, what would you say are the biggest exports from Switzerland?
Definitely cheese,
Hmm.
chocolate. When it comes to like other like goods, I think the Swiss Army knife is really
Yeah.
famous. The Victorinox watches, of course. Personally, I'm also a big watch fan. But yeah, like the main thing, like cheese, chocolate, the Army knife, and watches.
So does Swiss cheese actually come from Switzerland?
Yes, it does. Of course,
Okay,
there's some exceptions, but if you go to Switzerland, we're really proud about that. And you see the Made in Switzerland mark everywhere.
nice. And is there any local, say, chocolate brand to Zurich that people should try while they're there?
Mm, well, there is like Linden Sprüngli.
Hmm.
They have the headquarter or the House of Chocolate, it's called. But I would say it's more like international, but like the origins they are in Zurich. So Lindt, maybe also heard of it. It's quite
Yeah.
international. And Sprüngli is basically like the fancy or high-end brand of them.
Okay.
And this is one of my favorite. If you get like the hot chocolates they have at Paradeplatz, they have like the only coffee that's directly located at the like Fifth Avenue of Zurich. It's also from Lin Sprüngli. It's pricey, but they have one of the best hot chocolates. Other
Awesome.
one is lesser known. It's called Laderach. This is more if you want to bring some souvenirs as chocolate. And the other one, even lesser known, it's called Teuscher.
Okay.
It's like more the high-end chocolate, like Sprüngli, Laderach, Teuscher. And Lindt is like the, yeah, classic. It's still
Hmm.
really good. Of course, I'm a bit biased. I think we have the best chocolate in the world. Maybe someone from Belgium would disagree. I have discussions with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like Lindt and Sprüngli, they also have some like specifically chocolates for like with some the packagings like specifically made for Zurich. But I think it's a good question. I'm sure there are some specific like chocolate origin with like super small family business made in Zurich, but it's
Hmm.
less known than like in other places like Lucerne.
Hmm.
They some of those.
Okay. So, is there, just to start wrapping things up, is there anything else that you think that people should know before coming to Zurich for the first time?
I think really the cost of living and budget, it's not just a rumor, it's actually the case. So yeah, it's like what I hear all the time. It's like, oh my God, cost of living. Or also in summertime, like the few days at like 30 or 35 degrees. Like in Switzerland, like historically, we don't have these temperatures, or it was maybe like a week. And now it's like 1 or 2 months. Becoming those months, be prepared. A lot of the Airbnbs or even hotels, they don't have ACs. Some of them they
Hmm.
mention it, but it then is like a fan. And so many tourists complained that, oh my God, I paid like $300, $400 per night and don't even get AC. The thing is like, yeah, Zurich is expensive and we're not really made, or the old town back in the day wasn't built for with those temperatures and like
Hmm.
those quests in mind. And everything is super protected. So even if like the hotels or the owners of the property want to build it, it's usually super hard or even impossible. So keep that in mind for summertime.
That's great to know. All right. So, Lino, thank you so much. This has been amazing. How can people connect with you and find you if they are want to learn more about Zurich or if they're traveling there?
I think my website's the easiest way. It's called creativetour.ch. Otherwise, my Instagram is also creativetour_. And yeah, hopefully you also put some links.
Yes. Yeah, I will definitely have all the links for your website and everything you've mentioned on my website. And yeah, I'll link your Instagram on my posts. And but no, once again, thank you so much. This has been really insightful. So thank you.
Perfect. Pleasure to meet you.
You as
And wish you
well.
all the best with your podcast. I think it's a great project.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. It's been fun to do. I hope you've enjoyed my interview with Lino. As a reminder, you can find all of his recommendations and more at my website, www.tllpod.com. And if you'd like to learn how to make Zurich Schnatzlitz, make sure to find me on Instagram or TikTok at tll_pod. Come back in a week to see which city we dive into next. But until then, happy traveling.